I still remember the sound of the office clock ticking when they called me in. I'd worked there for 23 years. Same building, same worn chair, same coffee-stained desk. I was never the loudest, never the smartest, but I showed up every day early, quiet, reliable. I stayed late when no one else would. I never asked for promotions or raises. I was just there, holding things together like glue. So when Mr. Harris asked me to step into his office, I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe he needed help with another round of file auditing. Or maybe some of the newer girls had messed up the payroll forms again. I smiled like I always did and walked in. He didn't even look me in the eye. "Helen, I'm sorry," he said, voice low, eyes fixed on a folder. "They're downsizing. You're one of the cuts." For a second, I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't anger that hit me first, it was shame. My hands were still warm from the breakroom coffee. My bag was still under my desk. I had just organized the filing cabinet that morning like everything was normal. And now I was being let go like I'd never mattered at all. 23 years. "I understand," I said quietly, because what else was I supposed to say? He tried to hand me an envelope, probably the final paycheck. I didn't reach for it. My legs felt heavy, like they didn't belong to me. I nodded, turned around, and walked out of that office without a single word. No one looked up from their desks. No one stopped me. No one said goodbye. The sky was grey by the time I got off the bus. The wind felt colder than usual, or maybe it was just me. My fingers tightened around the strap of my purse as I walked down the familiar sidewalk toward my son's house. It used to feel like a second home. Now, it just felt borrowed. I took a deep breath before ringing the bell. Maybe I could just say it casually, light, like it wasn't a big deal. "Oh, Daniel, by the way, I'm not working anymore." Smile. Laugh a little. Pretend I wasn't terrified. The door opened. Alyssa stood there in her workout gear, phone in hand, barely glancing up. "You're back early," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "Mr. Harris asked to see me today," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "They're cutting staff. My position was one of them." Alyssa paused, phone still in hand. "Wait, what?" I nodded. "I'm no longer working there." That's when Daniel walked into the room, holding a protein shake, earbuds still dangling around his neck. "You lost your job?" he asked, blinking. Then his expression changed. Hardened. "I didn't lose it," I said gently. "They had to let people go." "For real?" Alyssa muttered. "So, what now?" I opened my mouth, but Daniel cut me off. "Wait, what are you going to do for money?" I blinked. "Well, I have some savings. And I thought maybe I could rest for a bit. I'm turning 60 soon, Anne." "Rest?" Daniel's voice shot up. "Mom, you can't just quit working." "Not now." "I didn't quit," I said softly. "I was let go." "But you're still healthy," Alyssa jumped in. "You're not retired, right? Like, you still plan to do something?" I didn't know what to say. My chest felt tight. This wasn't the reaction I imagined. I thought maybe they'd hug me, offer me a chair, a cup of tea. I thought they'd say, "You've worked so hard. It's okay to rest now." Instead, Daniel dropped his shake on the counter with a thud. "This house isn't cheap, Mom. We're already stretching things thin. You living here kind of depends on you helping out." I stared at him. "You mean financially?" He shrugged. "I'm just saying, we weren't expecting this." No one was. But I never thought my own child would treat me like a liability. I smiled the way I always do when I'm trying not to cry. "Of course. I'll figure something out." I headed upstairs slowly, my knees aching with every step. The hallway light flickered as I passed it. I placed my purse on the dresser and sat on the edge of the guest bed. That's when it hit me. I hadn't come home. I had walked into someone else's house, with a ticking clock over my head and a balance sheet next to my name. The next morning, the air in the house felt different. Quieter, heavier. Like I'd overstayed my welcome and everyone was just too polite to say it out loud. Or maybe they weren't. I came downstairs early to make coffee, hoping to start the day like I always did, peacefully. I'd barely filled the kettle when I heard Alyssa's voice behind me. "You don't have to do that," she said, not looking up from her phone. "We already have a housekeeper coming in later." "Oh," I murmured. "It's just coffee." She gave a little shrug. "Sure. I just don't want you overworking yourself, now that you're, not working." Her tone wasn't sarcastic exactly, but it wasn't kind either. Daniel walked in a minute later, yawning. He didn't say good morning. Just reached past me for a protein bar, then sat down with his laptop at the kitchen table. I poured myself a cup and sat down across from him. "I was thinking," I began, carefully. "Maybe I could help around here. Alyssa, didn't you mention a while back that you might want to try for a baby?" Alyssa glanced up. "Yeah, what about it?" "Well," I said, smiling gently, "if you do, I thought maybe I could be around to support you. Help you through the pregnancy. Look after the baby. I've done it once before." The silence that followed was brutal. Alyssa let out a dry laugh. "Helen, postpartum care isn't something just anyone can handle. It's not like babysitting. You need training." Daniel looked uncomfortable but said nothing. "I understand that," I said quietly. "But I raised you, didn't I?" "That was decades ago," Alyssa said, standing. "Things have changed. Newborn care is a science now." I didn't say anything. I just nodded and sipped my coffee, though it had already gone cold. That's when she added, "Besides, we're already planning to hire a professional. My mom's helping us with the arrangements." Of course she was. Gloria, the woman who once told me my clothes looked too secondhand to wear to a wedding. She would have the final say. She always did. I looked at Daniel. "I just wanted to help." He finally spoke. "We know. But it's better for everyone if we stick to what's already planned." Alyssa smoothed her hair, walking out of the kitchen. "Oh, and if you're not contributing financially anymore, we'll need to talk about covering the nanny and night nurse. We can't do it all on our own." Daniel didn't even flinch. That was the moment I realized. They didn't care that I lost my job. They didn't care that I was tired, or 60, or that I'd given them every ounce of my savings to help buy this house. They didn't care that I loved them. To them, I wasn't Helen. I was a monthly deposit. And now that I was zero, I was in the way. That Sunday evening, Daniel called for a quick family discussion. I knew what that meant. I'd been sensing it for days, the side glances, the awkward silences, the sudden over-politeness that felt more like distance than respect. I sat on the living room couch while Daniel and Alyssa paced the room, arms folded, expressions rehearsed. This wasn't a conversation. It was a presentation. "We've been thinking," Daniel started, "and now that things have changed with your work situation, we should probably figure out what makes the most sense for everyone." "For everyone," Alyssa repeated, like an echo. I stayed quiet. Alyssa walked over to the coffee table and placed a folder in front of me. "What's this?" I asked. She smiled, one of those cold, polished smiles she wore when she wanted something. "Some local retirement communities. We did some research. A few of them offer rooms in exchange for light duties, kitchen help, laundry support, things like that. You'd have your own space, some independence." I stared at the folder. "You want me to move out?" I said, flatly. Daniel raised his hands. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" I asked, keeping my voice calm even though my heart felt like it was being squeezed. "You said it yourself, Mom," he replied, avoiding my eyes. "You're not working. And we're overwhelmed. Between work, the mortgage, trying for a baby. It's a lot. I cook," I said. "I clean. I watch the dog. I do everything I can." Alyssa interjected, "And we appreciate that. But it's not really sustainable, long-term. And the cost of living," Daniel added. "We can't carry 3 adults on one salary, Mom." I nearly laughed. My salary had built this house. I had cashed out part of my retirement years ago to help with the down payment. The reason they had a roof over their heads was because I had once gone without one. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "And what if I don't want to scrub floors in a nursing home?" I asked, still staring at the folder. Alyssa shrugged. It's better than doing nothing. It was Daniel's silence that cut the deepest. He let her say it. He didn't defend me. Didn't stop her. Didn't even blink. I closed the folder slowly and stood up. I see, I said softly. Thank you both for thinking of me. Helen, don't take it the wrong way, Alyssa said, her voice sticky sweet. This is about balance. We're all just trying to live within our means. I walked past them without another word and went upstairs. That night, I didn't sleep. Because something broke that evening, not just in the family, but in me. And for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't just hurt. I was angry. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, watching the faint lines of moonlight creep across the plaster. It was the same ceiling I'd stared at the night I gave up my apartment to help Daniel pay off his student loans. The same ceiling I looked at after I spent my last bonus check fixing their leaky roof. I had watched that ceiling through tears, through migraines, through exhaustion. And yet, somehow, I was still here, being told I cost too much. They thought I had nothing. They thought I'd just fade quietly into a corner and not make a fuss. They had no idea what I was sitting on. 10 years ago, when I was still working full-time at Mr. Harris's office, the company had launched an internal investment opportunity. It was a long-term tech project, a startup created by a former employee with a vision. The pitch was simple: put in what you could, and if the company ever went public, we'd all win. Most people laughed. Some called it a pipe dream. A few of us, maybe 5 or 6, put in what we could manage. I wasn't a risk-taker, but something in my gut told me to go for it. I invested everything I had saved at the time. Not thousands. Tens of thousands. It didn't pay off. Not for a long time. The company barely survived the first few years. Every quarter, I'd get a small report, no profits, just potential. The founder, Jonah Lee, sent out emails every year like clockwork. Hold on, he always wrote. Better days are coming. And every time I thought about pulling out my funds, I stopped myself. Maybe because hope was all I had. Or maybe because, deep down, I needed to believe that someday, all my waiting would mean something. Then, 2 months ago, just before I lost my job, I received a certified letter. I remember opening it in the break room. I thought it was just another update. Instead, it was a notification. The company had been acquired in a landmark buyout. My shares, dusty and forgotten in some corner of the corporate books, had multiplied. What I had put in had become millions. $7.8 million, to be exact. I stood in that break room staring at the numbers like they were written in another language. I reread it 5 times. I didn't tell a soul, not even Mr. Harris. I just folded the letter and slipped it into the back of my wallet. It didn't feel real. But it was. And now, here I was. In a house that had used me, with people who discarded me the moment my paycheck stopped, being told to scrub floors to earn my keep. The silence of the night was interrupted only by the soft hum of the heater kicking on. I sat up slowly, turned on the lamp, and opened my purse. I pulled out the letter. Ran my fingers across the embossed seal. And for the first time since that day, I smiled. They thought I was done. But I was just getting started. The next morning, I got up before the sun. The house was still. No voices. No clinking dishes. Just the low hum of the fridge and the soft rustle of leaves outside the kitchen window. I moved slowly, carefully. Not out of fear, but because I wanted to take one last look. The chair in the corner where I used to knit during quiet afternoons. The faded rug I helped pick out at a clearance sale when they were furnishing the house. The little picture frame on the hallway table, Daniel's college graduation photo. I was the one who paid for that degree. All of it, mine, in pieces. And yet none of it mine at all. I went upstairs and packed my things. Not all, just the essentials. Clothes. Documents. My birth certificate. That one necklace my mother gave me before she passed. And the letter that now felt like a shield. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't even pause. Because deep inside, something had shifted. By the time Daniel came downstairs, I was sitting at the dining table with my suitcase zipped and ready beside me. Coffee brewed. Breakfast made. For them. One last time. He looked confused. Going somewhere? Yes, I said quietly. I'm leaving. Where to? I'm not sure yet. But somewhere I'm wanted. He blinked, laughed awkwardly. Come on, Mom. Don't be dramatic. We were just trying to have a real conversation about the future. No, I said, standing. You were trying to push me out without saying the words. So I'm saving you the trouble. Alyssa walked in mid-sentence. Is that your suitcase? Yes, I said again. I'll be out by noon. She blinked. But, where will you go? You don't even have a job. I smiled, not kindly. Not cruelly. Just with truth in my eyes. I'll be just fine. I turned to Daniel. You don't need to worry about me anymore. Or my money. Or my presents. This house, this life, you can have it all. I'm done paying for a seat at a table where I'm only tolerated. He looked stunned. Wait. Mom, can we just talk about this? I reached for my suitcase. No. We've already talked enough. And without another word, I walked out the front door. No one followed me. No one stopped me. And for the first time in decades, I didn't look back. The bus pulled away from the curb, and I sat there, watching the houses blur into motion. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't fear this time. It was something else. Freedom. I had no destination. No plan. Just a suitcase, a phone, and a bank balance that could rewrite the rest of my life. I checked into a quiet boutique hotel downtown, nothing too flashy, but warm, clean, and quiet. The receptionist asked if I'd be staying long. Maybe a few weeks, I said, handing her my card. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw the name on it. A private wealth bank. The kind that didn't issue cards unless you had at least 6 figures, sometimes 7. She didn't say a word. Just smiled a little brighter and upgraded me to a suite. I spent the next few days resting. I slept without setting an alarm. I walked in the park with no destination. I ate breakfast at a little cafe by the river and watched strangers rush past while I finally sat still. And then, I began to plan. I pulled out a notebook from my suitcase and made a list. Find a lawyer. Search for property. Reclaim what's mine. Rebuild a life worth living. The fourth one, I underlined twice. Because for 60 years, I had been living for everyone but myself. For Daniel. For Alyssa. For co-workers. For my ex-husband. For people who didn't even know the full shape of my name, only what they could take from it. But not anymore. By the end of the week, I had contacted a real estate agency that specialized in high-end listings. I didn't tell them much, just that I was looking for something private, elegant, and peaceful. And when the agent asked what kind of budget I was working with, I simply said, "There is no budget. Show me everything." There was silence on the line. Then a polite, "Understood, Ms. Wilson. I'll arrange viewings immediately." It felt like slipping into a second skin. One I never thought I'd wear. The skin of a woman who wasn't surviving, but choosing. I went back to my hotel room that night and stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker like stars. For the first time in my life, I wasn't someone's employee, or someone's mother, or someone's responsibility. I was just Helen. And I had everything I needed. The real estate office sat in the heart of the city's most exclusive district. I showed up early, dressed simply, beige slacks, a soft sweater, hair pinned back. No diamonds, no designer labels. Just me. I liked it that way. Let them assume I was nobody. It made what came next even better. A young woman named Ruby greeted me with a shy smile. She couldn't have been older than 25. Still had that fresh, hopeful sparkle in her eyes. "Ms. Wilson, I'll be showing you the model villas today. Please," I said. "Call me Helen." She grinned. "Right this way." We'd barely stepped past the reception when I heard the familiar voice from across the showroom. Oh my God, is that Helen? I turned slowly. There she was. Tessa. Niece of Gloria, Alyssa's mother. I'd met her at a couple of uncomfortable holiday dinners. The kind of woman who spoke in compliments laced with poison and always looked you up and down before speaking. She walked over, heels tapping like gunshots against the tile. "What are you doing here?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "Don't tell me you're actually looking to buy one of these." I smiled. "I am." Tessa laughed loudly. "You're funny. These villas start at $1 million. They don't take walk-ins from, housekeepers." People turned to look. Her voice had that cutting edge meant to humiliate. Ruby's face turned red. "Tessa, she's a scheduled client." Tessa cut her off. "Relax. I know her. She's from my cousin's side. Used to clean houses. I'm just saving you the trouble of wasting time." I didn't flinch. Instead, I opened my purse and handed Ruby a slim envelope. Inside were my financial credentials, proof of funds, full liquidity, over $8 million. Ruby's eyes scanned the numbers. Her mouth parted in disbelief. I didn't realize." "You're not the only one," I said calmly. Tessa reached for the envelope, snatching it from Ruby's hand. Her eyes darted over the page, then froze. Her smile vanished. "Where did you get this?" she snapped. "It's mine," I said. "Every last cent. And I'm buying a villa today." Tessa's voice lowered to a hiss. "You can't just show up here and pretend you're someone you're not. This must be fake." Ruby stepped between us. "It's not fake. It's been verified." More eyes turned. Whispers spread. The woman they thought was a cleaner was now the wealthiest person in the room. Tessa turned to the front desk, waving over the sales manager. "Alex, this woman is harassing staff. She needs to leave." But Alex wasn't looking at her. He was already walking toward me, smiling. "Ms. Wilson," he said, "I've been notified of your credentials. We're honored to assist you today. Is everything okay here?" "Not yet," I said, gaze fixed on Tessa. "But I'm sure it will be." Tessa looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. I turned back to Ruby. "Shall we go see the villa now?" "Yes," she said, chin lifted high, pride in her step. And as we walked away, I could feel every set of eyes following us, some stunned, some ashamed, and one pair burning with envy. They still thought I was nothing. But now they'd start to understand. I was never theirs to step on. 3 days later, I moved into my new home. It was perched at the edge of a gated community, surrounded by trees that whispered with the breeze. The villa had high ceilings, warm light, and a sunroom that faced the morning sky. Everything about it felt like peace. It wasn't just a house, it was a declaration. For years, I had slept in corners, folded myself into guest rooms, paid mortgages for others. Now, finally, this space was mine. Not borrowed. Not shared. Not begged for. Mine. Ruby helped finalize the paperwork, her eyes still wide every time she saw the final digits on the transfer. "You don't know what this means to me," she said, near tears. "This is my first sale." "You earned it," I told her. "You treated me like a person, not a number. That matters." I hired a lawyer the same week. Not to go after Daniel. Not yet. First, I wanted to settle my life. Furnish the house. Set up my bank accounts, my security, my documents. I worked with a private consultant to quietly transfer everything into trusts, in my name alone. No co-signers. No emergency contacts. No next of kin boxes filled in. Because no one had earned that place anymore. And when I was ready, I asked my lawyer to review the documents for Daniel and Alyssa's home. I'd paid over 60% of the mortgage. But the house had been put in their names. I never pushed back. I wanted them to feel secure, to start their life without the burdens I'd carried. But now, I was ready to undo my silence. And according to my lawyer, I could. I had written proof of every payment I made, bank records, email agreements, even text messages from Daniel thanking me for covering the heavy months again. It wouldn't be fast, but it would be thorough. While the legal team began building the case, I leaned into a life I never thought I'd live. I took piano lessons. Started painting in the sunroom. Learned how to make handmade pasta from a chef who came in once a week. No one called me at 6 a.m. for a ride. No one asked for money. No one complained about the dinner I cooked or the clothes I wore. The silence wasn't lonely. It was healing. But even in that silence, word began to spread. And it didn't take long before someone came knocking on my life again. Not with kindness, but with panic. It started with flowers. A huge bouquet of white lilies and sunflowers delivered to my villa gate by a trembling delivery boy who had no idea what he was carrying. The card attached had only 6 words. Wishing you a lovely weekend. Daniel. No love, your son. No, I'm sorry. Just a bland, polished attempt to wedge his way back in. I didn't even open the note. I carried the flowers straight into the kitchen, lifted the lid of the trash can, and let the entire bouquet drop in with a muffled thud. Then I snapped a photo, bent petals, crumpled card, soft white flowers crushed like they meant nothing. I sent the photo to the gatehouse with a simple message. From now on, deny all deliveries from this sender. Permanently. But that didn't stop him. Daniel escalated. He started waiting by the gated entrance of the community. First, it was once or twice a week. Then every day. He'd stand across the street, pacing, glancing toward the security booth, sometimes holding a coffee cup, pretending it was casual. It wasn't. He was waiting for me. One evening, I returned from a bookstore run. My driver pulled up to the gate, and there he was leaning against a street lamp like a forgotten actor in a play no one wanted to watch. As the car slowed, Daniel stepped into view, waving. When he saw me in the backseat, he raised both hands and mouthed something. I didn't roll the window down. He walked alongside the car as we crept forward. And then, out of nowhere, he dropped to his knees. Right there. In the middle of the street. People slowed their cars. A woman across the way pulled out her phone to film him. He was sobbing. "Mom. Please don't do this. I'm sorry, okay?" I was stressed. We were under pressure. Alyssa didn't mean what she said. "We need you. I need you." I stared straight ahead. He kept shouting. "You can't just erase me from your life. I'm still your son." But that was the thing. He wasn't acting like my son. He was acting like someone who'd lost access to something valuable. My silence said everything. The car rolled forward. The gate opened. And I left him there on his knees, alone in his performance. He kept it up for 2 full weeks. Rain or shine, weekend or weekday, Daniel was there. But I never stopped. Never waved. Never paused. And then, he disappeared. At least for a while. I thought it was over. But I was wrong. Because he wasn't trying to win me back. He was preparing for war. It started with whispers. A few odd glances at the grocery store. An awkward pause from the barista when I gave my name. People were looking at me longer than they should, but not with admiration. With judgment. I didn't understand it at first. I hadn't told anyone about Daniel. I hadn't posted anything. My life had been quiet, private, untouched. Until it wasn't. Ruby was the one who called me. "Have you seen what he's doing?" she asked, her voice shaking with fury. "Who?" I said, though I already knew. "Daniel. Your son. His live streaming on ViewNet. Every day. He's calling it how my mother abandoned me." My hands went still. I opened the app. Searched for the channel. There it was, his face, pale and strained, front and center on the screen. A soft filter blurred out the redness in his eyes, but nothing could hide the performance. He looked heartbroken. Vulnerable. Betrayed. He was brilliant, in a sick way. "My mother left me when I needed her most," he said to his growing audience. "She worked as a housekeeper for decades, and when she finally came into money, she cut me off like I never existed." His voice cracked at all the right moments. "She never supported me in college. I lived alone in a basement apartment while she was working in someone else's mansion. When I got married, she didn't help. When we tried for a baby, she refused to even be part of it. Now she's rich and living in a gated villa, pretending I never existed." Thousands of comments poured in. "She's disgusting. No real mom would do that. You're so brave for speaking out. Some people forget their roots the second they taste money. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. Not just because he lied, but because people believed him. He started selling merchandise. Little t-shirts that said "Mama doesn't love me" and mugs with "Unwanted Sun Club" printed across them. Viewers sent him donations, thousands in sympathy money. They called me a monster, a narcissist, a villain. And for a moment, I almost let the pain crush me. But then I remembered the letter in my wallet. The dusty folders I'd saved. The photos. The bills. The documents. I remembered every sleepless night spent holding his feverish body against my chest. Every job I worked. Every meal I skipped so he could eat better. Every penny I put toward that house, that degree, that wedding he said I didn't support. And I remembered one more thing. I still had a voice. He wasn't the only one who could go online. And I wasn't the type to stay silent when someone spat on my sacrifice. Not anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my desk, the glow of the screen lighting up my quiet villa, watching Daniel's face on loop. Watching strangers call me every name they could think of. Watching money pour into his fake story. But I didn't cry. I opened a new browser tab. Create channel. I named it. So this is the mom who abandoned Daniel. And then I hit go live. At first, only a few people joined. A handful of watchers, probably expecting an unbothered rich woman ready to fight fire with fire. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even frown. I just looked into the camera and said, "Let me tell you a story. Not the one my son is telling. Mine." I started from the beginning. I adopted Daniel when he was 1 year old. He had a severe heart defect. His birth parents left him in a dumpster behind a gas station. A stranger heard his cries and brought him to the hospital. That's where I met him, while volunteering. I took him home knowing he might not survive. My husband didn't want him. I left that marriage to raise Daniel alone. I worked 3 jobs. I fed him first and ate what was left. I spent my nights folding laundry and my mornings pushing carts through hospital corridors, cleaning up after patients. Every cent I had went to his treatment, his schooling, his comfort. When he went to college, I took a full-time job across the country as a live-in office assistant just to send money home. Then I started holding up receipts, hospital bills, tuition payments, photos of his graduation, the deed to the house he and Alyssa lived in. I didn't speak like a victim. I spoke like a woman telling the truth. I never told him he was adopted. Not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't want him to carry the pain of knowing he was thrown away twice. I wanted him to believe he was chosen. Loved. Safe. I paused. The comment section was filling up now, thousands watching. Some crying. Some apologizing. Some angry. When I lost my job, I told them gently. I thought, just for once, maybe someone would look after me. They didn't. Instead, they told me to clean floors at a senior home to earn my keep. But what they didn't know is that the investment I made years ago finally paid off. I didn't win the lottery. I didn't steal. I didn't marry into money. I waited. I trusted. And I earned it. Then I played the audio recording. Daniel's voice, casual, heartless. Just find a job for her, maybe a rich old man who needs a live-in. She's good at cleaning and she knows how to stay quiet. The stream exploded. No way. That's his voice. I recognize it. He used you. He milked you. I'm deleting my donation right now. This is elder abuse, plain and simple. I ended the stream quietly. But before I clicked out, I said one final thing. I'm not here to be pitied. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to be free. And now the truth belongs to me. I logged off. And I let the internet do the rest. By morning, the tide had turned. Daniel's channel was flooded. But not with sympathy. With fury. You lied about being abandoned. She adopted you. She saved your life. You treated your mother like a paycheck and then cried for donations. Get off the internet. Screenshots of my live stream were everywhere. Side-by-side comparisons. Clip compilations. People played my voice over his fake sob stories. The truth had found its legs, and it was running fast. By noon, Daniel posted a tearful video trying to backpedal. "I didn't mean to lie," he said. "I just wanted people to understand how hurt I felt. That was my truth." But no one was buying it anymore. Commenters called him a fraud, a manipulator, a parasite. By 5 p.m., the platform removed his monetization. All income gone. By 6 p.m., they took down his merch store. By 8 p.m., his channel was suspended. I didn't post anything that day. I brewed tea, sat by the window, watered my new garden. The sun streamed across the piano bench, and I played a few notes, soft ones, gentle ones. Music that had no intention of impressing anyone. Just a quiet song for a woman finally allowed to rest. That night, I got a call from my lawyer. "We've filed the defamation suit," he said. "The audio you uploaded is more than enough evidence. We'll pursue damages and permanent online protection orders. He won't be able to use your name again." I nodded. "Do you want to press for financial compensation as well?" I thought about it. "No," I said softly. "I don't want a single cent from him. I just want him gone." There was a pause. "Understood," he said. "It's already being taken care of." It was over. No more whisper campaigns. No more doorstep sobbing. No more pretending. Daniel had finally been seen for what he was. And I was finally seen for what I had always been. Not a burden. Not a failure. A survivor. 2 months after the lawsuit, I received a call from my legal team. The house I had helped Daniel and Alyssa buy, the one I gave up everything for, was now under review. The court had ruled that I had provided the majority of the down payment, paid utilities, maintenance, even renovations. The evidence was undeniable. "We're filing to reverse ownership," my lawyer said. "You'll be the legal holder of the property in less than 3 weeks." I didn't say anything at first. I just stared out the window, watching the wisteria vines flutter in the wind. It wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. It was about correction. About taking back what was always mine, silently, calmly, with the grace they never gave me. I didn't tell anyone. Not Daniel. Not Alyssa. Not even Gloria. I let the letter arrive on its own, certified, stamped, legally signed. I imagined their faces when they opened it. I didn't smile. But I did sleep like a baby that night. A week later, Ruby came by with a fresh bouquet and a soft smile. She'd become a regular part of my world now, not as a real estate agent, but as a friend. "You seem lighter," she said. "I am," I said. "It's the first time in years I'm not carrying other people's weight." We sat outside in the sunroom and had lemon tea. She asked what I planned to do with the reclaimed house. "Sell it," I said. "It holds too much dust. Too many ghosts." She nodded. "And after that?" I paused. "I think I'll disappear for a little while," I said. "Not in sadness. Just in peace. Because for the first time in my life, I could choose quiet over survival." I sold both properties, the villa I'd bought in a rush of fury, and the house they once called theirs. The market was hot, and I walked away with a tidy profit. I didn't look back. Instead, I moved to a lakeside town no one had ever heard of. A quiet place with soft air, sun-dappled trees, and silence that didn't feel empty but safe. I planted roses and wisteria. I painted in the afternoons. I listened to old records and brewed dark roast coffee every morning just the way I liked it. No one asked me for money. No one asked me to shrink. No one asked me to prove my worth. And sometimes, when the wind blew through the open windows and I heard the soft rustle of life outside, I would sit still and whisper to myself. I was never the villain. I was just the one they didn't think would walk away. People still ask me. Not reporters or strangers on the internet, but the quiet ones. The women at the market who recognize me from the news stories. The librarian who asked if I was that Helen. The elderly man who left a cup of tea on my porch with a note that said, "You gave many of us the courage to say no." They all ask the same question, in their own careful way. Would you do it all again? Would I still adopt a child who wasn't mine? Would I still sacrifice everything, my marriage, my career, my savings, my time? Would I still love someone who threw me out like yesterday's mail? And the answer, after all this time, is yes. But not in the same way. I would love Daniel. I would take him in. I would fight for his life again. I would work the jobs, spend the nights in waiting rooms, hold his hand through every surgery. I would be his mother. But I would not erase myself in the process. I would not stay silent while being disrespected. I would not mistake being needed for being loved. And I would never again let guilt wear my name like armor. Because love, real love, doesn't demand you destroy yourself to prove it. It took me 60 years to learn that lesson. And maybe that's okay. Some people find freedom in their 20s. Some never find it at all. But me, I found it right on time. Now I wake up to birdsong, not bills. To sunlight, not tension. To stillness, not strategy. I am no longer a mother, a housekeeper, a safety net, or a scapegoat. I am Helen. Whole. Unapologetic. Finally free.